wealth, his wealth and fame, great big ears and a big long name. But our Marc Emery, he takes the spot. The whole world knows he's the Prince of Pot. He's the Prince of Pot. He's the Prince of Pot. Now shy, he's not. He gives it all he's got. He's the Prince of Pot.
I'm Jeremiah Vandermeer here with marijuana activist and my former boss, Marc Emery, who's currently incarcerated in North Fraser Pretrial Center in Port Coquitlam, British Columbia, while he awaits extradition to the United States, all for selling marijuana seeds over the internet. So, Marc, awesome to talk to you today.
Yes.
How is life on the other side? How are you holding up?
Well, some good things are going on. There's a wonderful vigil outside of the prison. Now, I can't see it because I face the opposite direction in my little pod. But every day there are people outside with posters, free Marc posters, and giving leaflets out to passers-by up here in Port Coquitlam. And the other day, you know, at the rally when it started on Saturday, many people in the A pod unit were telling me when they were able to talk to me that they saw the rally out front and were very excited by it. And they're there at night. They've pitched a tent and they're living there. It's like a little tent vigils, and so I'm really excited that for many days now there have been a vigil on my behalf outside of North Fraser. And additionally, I get comforted by letters that have already started to arrive from Jody and some other supporters and other inmates too, I may add, from other prisons across British Columbia. And for me, though, I mean, it's a very difficult lifestyle because, for example, I'm in an 8-foot by 10-foot concrete and steel cell, and I'm in there with another inmate, and I'm on weekdays and 20 hours a day on weekends. So you have almost no movement whatsoever. You never see sunlight. There's a little 15-foot by 40-foot walking area that does get fresh outside air, but because the walls in that area are 22 feet high, even at high noon, the sun never actually touches your skin. So I don't know how people are expected to get their vitamin D here. So you never actually feel the sun. And you don't have any real outdoor areas. The actual interesting thing is that this is a place where everyone is presumed innocent until proven guilty, and yet the conditions here and the food here and everything is much more restrictive and much worse quality than if you were actually convicted and put in a correctional center, a detention center, or a federal penitentiary. So I find it interesting because oftentimes the media and people criticize the 2-for-1 credit that people get while awaiting trial here, but the reality is that life here is much more restrictive, much more punitive than it actually is when you get convicted. For example, in our room, we have a sink and a toilet, and I always have to find time to take a poop when my roommate is out of the room, and that, like I say, on weekends is only 4 hours out of 24 hours that we're actually able to do that, have some degree of privacy possibly. And we have a television in our room, but the inmates pay for those televisions, by the way, and we have a PlayStation in our room, which I hate. I don't play video games. It drives me nuts that my roommate loves to play it because the sound is repetitive over and over again, so it's quite annoying if you don't like them. But those are paid for by the inmates. There's actually very little that we have that's actually paid for by the taxpayer. And so I'm trapped in this 8 by 10 room for 18 to 20 hours a day, and when I'm not in there, I'm able to take a shower, and I'm able to go get the food. Now, the food here is very bad. I'm on a vegetarian diet, but it's the cheapest garbage you could possibly get. For example, of the 3 meals I was given yesterday, I could only eat one of them partially, and today breakfast was inedible. It's all starches and sugars and crappy food. And for example, in the last 4 days, I've been able to get 2 oranges and 1 apple, and I've had 1 serving of fresh vegetables. That was steamed broccoli, a very small portion on Saturday night. And then otherwise, most things are completely inedible. And that's a vegetarian diet. You look today, every single person refused to eat the so-called mystery meat. It's a ham-looking thing that's of very poor quality. And that's why I chose a vegetarian diet, because I just don't eat any of the meat here. It's all appallingly bad cuts, and it's cheap stuff. And that's something I wanted to ask you, Jeremiah, too, is if you could research who gets the contract for the food here, because I'd like to write them and make some suggestions. We have 3 vending machines here that you can order things out of. One is a beverage vending machine, and 2 are so-called food vending machines, and it's all garbage. In fact, the bottle of water that you can theoretically order in the beverage vending machine has been out of stock for 10 days now. I haven't been able to get a bottle of water because the tap water here is very untrustworthy. untrustworthy, in my opinion, and they can't get a bottle of water out of that vending machine in 10 days. And there's nothing like V8 juice. I mean, they could put V8 juice in there that would be good for you, that would have a lot of vitamins and minerals, and it would be a great way to get them. Nothing like that. It's all Coca-Cola and stupid root beer and garbagey pops. And then in the vending machine, it's all chocolate bars and potato chips. And I've already made 2 official complaints to the ministry of the Attorney General. There's a complaint form here, and I fill them out every day now because there's so much to complain about here. I ask them, why don't you have packaged salads and packaged fresh fruit in there that people can buy, even at $5, $6, $7 each? People here get money given to them by their families or relatives, or in my case, by Jody, and we can order things in the vending machine. But there's just nothing that is remotely useful or good for you in that vending machine. So I've been complaining about the lack of sunlight that is not available here. Everybody's going to get a vitamin D deficiency. It seems cruel and unusual. There's no reason to design a prison where you can't at least walk around and get fresh air and sunlight for half hour to an hour a day. That's what happens in a detention center. In fact, in a detention center, you can be in a work camp and be exposed to direct sunlight for up to 5, 6, 7 hours a day. And here, not a thing. And same with good food. When I was in a work camp in Saskatoon Correctional, after I was convicted of passing that one joint and spent 3 months in jail, we made our own food, and it was far, far superior to the garbage that's served here. So it's a real test of one's principles to have to go through this rather arduous and deprivation, really, is what it is.
Wow. So, Mark, have you been talking to other inmates that are there, making friends?
Well, all the inmates are always nice, man. Never have trouble with inmates. Some of them are very, very helpful. One fellow runs the law library here and is actually one of the head cleaners and runs the food, and every now and then they slip me an extra apple or an extra orange when one's available. Or, sometimes they collect the celery bits and carrot sticks that people don't eat, and then they hand them to me. So, I get occasionally like a little mouse scurrying for food. I get a little extra bits here and there if people leave them behind. But typically, inmates are fine. And the only thing is that, when you're in a cell with an inmate and he wants to play video games, or I've watched, for example, CSI New York, CSI Miami, and CSI Las Vegas like 30 times. And let me tell you, that is a very bad show. Even though I've watched it 30 times, I can tell you authoritatively it's a manipulative, bad show where I notice every single person they interview is guilty of something in some way or another, and paints a very dark and cynical view of human nature where everybody's a would-be criminal or a wannabe criminal or a heartless, unfeeling person. And it's interesting that inmates like to watch crime shows. I find that fascinating. And I was going to make a joke about how they also have institutionalized torture here called watching the Canucks. But that's sort of a voluntary torture that I put myself through watching the Canucks on our television here. So inmates are fine. The guards are indifferent, and really they're just here, but they're neither for you or against you. They're just like, they could be robots. A robot could do this job. In fact, one day a robot probably will do the job because there's no difference.